Welcome, sports watchers, to In the Zone. Alongside Billy Cullen and Zach Humphreys, I'm Liam Crane. With a full week of March Madness to talk about, along with NFL free agency and NBA playoff implications, In the Zone starts now. Starting out with March Madness, the Sweet 16 continued to bring excitement throughout the week with close games and surprising endings. And for the first time ever, there were 0 number 1 seeds to make it through to the Elite Eight. Both Houston and Alabama were upset, as well as Florida Atlantic continuing its impressive run. Now, Billy, what are your thoughts on the Sweet 16 turnouts?
I just have to say the start. This is by far the most unpredictable March Madness that is in the
probably
ever, right? Yep. And I know it's said every single year, but this is the first time since 1970 that 3 of the 4 Final Four teams, it's their first time in it, which is, I don't think anyone saw Florida Atlantic getting to where they are right now. Something that I always take away going into March Madness, whose teams you cannot trust. Houston is one of those teams. Every year they're always highly ranked, especially the last few years, and they just cannot show it in the big moments. One of my favorite games throughout the Sweet 16 was Michigan State and Kansas State. That game was unbelievable. It was back and forth. Michigan State came back late in the second half, and then in overtime, Kansas State made it when it mattered most. I mean, Noel had 19 assists. He is an incredible distributor of the basketball. But Gonzaga beating UCLA again, on a last-second 3. It's got to be heartbreaking to the Bruins over there in LA.
Yeah, and I mean, even like watching that game throughout the entire course of the game, the way Gonzaga controlled the boards against UCLA, I mean, they doubled in rebounds. Zaga had 16 offensive rebounds. It was just impressive, and I mean, for me, it was the Timmy show. Drew Timme had 36 points. It was incredible to watch how he was able to literally carry a team on his back. I think they gave him the ball every time they went down the court, and UCLA couldn't find an answer. But I also wanted to backtrack to your statement about Houston. I mean, I don't know a single team that's going to be able to beat a Miami team that is shooting 50% from the field. I mean, Houston was definitely was my championship winning team in the bracket, but Miami played fantastic throughout that game. I mean, 50% from the field. I mean, they couldn't be stopped, even from the three-point range. They were nailing 44% of the threes compared to Houston's 29%. It was Miami killed it that week, and I mean, even Florida Atlantic, they played great against Tennessee.
Absolutely. It was crazy. Now, looking at the Elite Eight, the March Madness gods gave us 3 underdog victories, 2 close contests, and a blowout no one expected. Setting up for a Final Four, only 37 brackets predicted out of 20 million submitted through ESPN. Now, Zach, what was your reaction to this wild weekend?
I was very surprised to backtrack to Florida Atlantic. I apologize to all the different Florida Atlantic fans because I didn't believe in them from the round of 32. Kansas State looked really good, as you mentioned, going into the Elite Eight. But the way Florida Atlantic was able to play through Kansas State, and that was such a team win that I witnessed when I watched them.
Yeah, what's your take?
I was going to say, how about UConn beating down Gonzaga? And clearly I think that was a very emotional win for Gonzaga. I mean, last-second shot, emotions are high, you're feeling yourself a little bit. And UConn shut them down real quick, especially in that second half. What are they outscoring by 21 in the second half? Scored over 40. I mean, that's absurd. But also Miami outscoring Texas by 15 in the second half, scoring 50 points in the second half. You don't see that a lot in college basketball. And also Jordan Miller for Miami was perfect shooting. 7 of 7 from the field and 13 of 13 from the free throw line.
That's another one of those clinics that Miami put on. I mean, they were shooting 59% from the field. Even Texas shot 50%, but I mean, there is no team across the entire NCAA that is beating a team that is shooting just shy of 60% from the field. Nobody's beating them. But I want to mention my favorite game of the week, San Diego State versus Creighton. It wasn't that high scoring of a game, no, but it came down to the wire. Every shot, every point mattered. Every missed basket mattered. And, I mean, even the ending itself was exciting with a foul, 1 second left in the game. He only made one of the free throws. I think that game was electric.
Right, right. Now, with that being said, the Final Four stage has been set. Florida Atlantic will take on San Diego State as Miami will face UConn. All teams with their eyes set on the national championship game. Now, Zach, who's making it to the final dance?
It is definitely going to be a San Diego State versus Miami matchup. I mean, Miami is I've been patting them on the back this whole show, but I mean, they are one of the hottest teams in the league. UConn is definitely I can't just ignore them, but Miami is shooting so efficiently from the field. It's a collective team effort. I mean, just in the Elite Eight against Texas, all of the starters in Miami scored double digits. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Miami played very well throughout the entire bracket. I think they are not easily, but they are making it through along with San Diego State. Florida Atlantic, my biggest pet peeve with them is they don't take care of the ball enough. They had 21 turnovers again in the Elite Eight and then another 12 in the Sweet 16. And against these teams like San Diego State, they're not just going to go down the court and miss a shot. If you turn the ball over, they are going to make it hurt in the end.
Billy, who's going to the finals?
So I feel like either way you go in these matchups, you're not wrong because it's March Madness, anything can happen. Unfortunately, Zach, I completely disagree with you on both. I actually am going to go UConn, and the only reason I'm going UConn is because of the fact that I just feel like they've been there before. I feel like they're the more experienced of the two teams. Coming into the season, we had high expectations for them. And even though all these other other teams in the Final Four have knocked out a bunch of, there's a reason no number one seed is left anymore. But I do believe that UConn's going to be able to get there, and I also think they're going to win the national championship. With that being said, I also think FAU is going to there's just some sort of Cinderella story going on here. And I can't explain it. I think that they're the better team? No. But for some reason, they have just been able to continuously win and win. There's a reason they only lost 3 games in the regular season. So I think it's UConn in that.
You're definitely choosing them for the story. That's what's happening. I got
100%.
All right. That being said, NBA playoff contention remains close. As more free agency stories develop across the NFL, in the zone, we'll be right back. Throughout the Eastern Conference in the NBA, teams have begun to secure their spot in the playoffs. The Bucks, Celtics, Sixers, and the red-hot Cavs have each clinched a playoff berth. With an easy schedule going forward, Billy, will the Cavaliers make some noise before the start of the playoffs?
Listen, they are one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference for a reason. Donovan Mitchell is one of the best individual players in the sport, and they play well together overall. And they probably, out of the next 6 games, they got Atlanta, the Knicks, Pacers, Orlando twice, and Charlotte. They should win bare minimum 4, right? Anything can happen in the NBA, especially towards the end, but they should at least win 4. But I think that they're going to stay at the 4 seed, and they're going to have to play the Knicks in the first round, and I don't think that's an easy series, especially for them. And even if they get by the Knicks, I don't see them beating the Sixers, Celtics, or the Bucks in a 7-game series. I don't. They don't have the star power, nor, yes, they have the depth. But at the end of the day, who on the Cavs is going to defend Joel Embiid for an entire game? Like if they have to play them, or Giannis, or and even though they got depth, Boston's got more depth. On top, they got Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They're going to be good for now, and they have, for the next few years, they got their future set. But I don't see them going far in these playoffs this year.
Without a doubt. I agree with just about everything. And across the NBA playoffs, like you said, depth is the biggest role in the NBA playoffs. If you don't have depth, you're not making it out the first round. You're not even winning. It's going to be a sweep, most likely, because your starters need rest, and while the other bench is cooking your guys on the court, it's just not going to work out in the end. But, I think the Cavs have a legit shot here. The way that they've won 9 of their last 11. They're playing fantastic right now. The East is pretty locked up right now. It's not like the West where they're all within 2 games. The East is pretty locked up right now. I don't see the Cavs jumping anybody in the rankings yet, but I feel like they could actually make a pretty deep playoff run. I feel like with the roster that they have, Donovan Mitchell is playing fantastic basketball. Darius Garland has proved himself to be that reliable guy on the court. When it comes to the Cavs playing the Knicks, I feel like the Cavs could beat them in 6, and then later on, I feel like they are the type of team that you can't sleep on if they make it to the very next round.
Sure. I feel a hot take coming over here, so I'm going to go to you, Billy, real quick. Who do you think has the best chance to make that finals run in the East? Who's the strongest team in the East right now?
I believe if the Bucks stay healthy, they're probably the best. I mean, listen, I think the biggest reason why that they didn't they didn't go past the second round last year is because of Chris Middleton's injury. I mean, now Chris Middleton's not the greatest player to ever touch a basketball, but he's a vital part of that team. I mean, they went to the NBA Finals, actually won the NBA Finals the year before when they kept their core three together. So if you had to pick one, I think it's Milwaukee. And by the way, I do respect Cleveland. I'm not trying to make it like I'm disrespecting them, but I just don't see them matching the firepower of the other three teams.
Do you agree? Or is it the Bucks?
Oh yeah, the Bucks are playing fantastic basketball, and I mean, like you said, we can't just diss the Celtics. I mean, their bench is incredible. The way that they've been taken over the entire league, it's just fantastic. I mean, I think it's either the Celtics or the Bucks that are ultimately going to make it to the conference finals, and it's going to be one of those green teams making it through.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a concern though in recent games for the Celtics, which is why I think the Bucks story has really become a little more believable. Let's send it over to the West. 8 teams are fighting for a playoff spot. They're all within 3.5 games from each other, with some recent trouble in Dallas after losing 7 of their last 10, pushing them out of play in the tournament. Zach, do you have the Mavs, or do the Mavs have enough to make a late push to make the postseason, or is it too late?
After looking at it, I mean, the way that Dallas has just seemed to have fallen apart, and if you look at the teams that they are in contention with, I'd include the Lakers, who I do not see falling. They have a pretty easy schedule from here on out. The Thunder, although they have lost Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they lost him against the Detroit Pistons. That's the easiest matchup that they could possibly have with their star player being out. And I mean, even with him being out, it's never a guarantee. Over the past 7 games, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's been out with this injury, but even when he has been cleared to play, he's dropping 32 points a game, shooting 50% from the field. It's incredible that he's doing that on a bad leg. But I don't see the Mavs having enough time to make that push. The only team I see possibly falling is potentially OKC if they get upset, or the Pelicans, because the Pelicans have a really tough schedule coming up.
I completely agree. If I had to pick a team, I think right now them and Dallas and Oklahoma City I'm talking about, they're right now tied, but Oklahoma City has the tiebreaker. And right now, Oklahoma City, to end the season, has to play Phoenix, Golden State, and the last game of the season is against Memphis. Those are 3 of the best teams in the West, and those are not going to be easy to get through. When it comes to the Mavericks, yes, their schedule is a little difficult. They got Philadelphia, at Philly tonight. They got to play Miami. Sacramento's in there. So they got tough games too. But if they can win 4 of 6, I expect Oklahoma City to drop at least 3. I think that's good enough for them to make it. And also, you expect the offensive firepower of Kyrie Irving and Luka to get you there. The issue for them is they have no defense and they have no depth because they traded it all away.
March Madness seems kind of like the first domino to fall before sports start to get really interesting again, and I'm just so excited to see how the West plays out. It's going to be amazing. Now, in other sports, the NFL free agency is just about wrapped up across the league, but there are still plenty of worthy signings. Billy, which signings from this past week stand out to you the most?
So, I'm going to go with a team. I'm not going to go with anyone in particular, not a particular player. And I know this is going to seem hot, probably, but I'm going to go Carolina. I actually really like what they have done, okay? Now, I think the trade for first overall pick was a little excessive, but if you truly believe that the guy you're picking at 1 is the guy, you trade anything, right? They signed DJ Chark and Adam Thielen, so yes, I think DJ Moore is the much better receiver of those 2, but you're bringing in depth, you're bringing in a veteran who they don't have on that team. They do not really have a true veteran. I like Devon Bell signing also to pair up with Jeremy Chin. I think that they're a really good young core, and I love that they got Frank Reich there as their head coach. I like Josh McCown at quarterback coach. I really like what they're building in Carolina, and if the quarterback they take, which I believe they're going to take Stroud, and that's who I would take if I was Carolina, I think that team could go far. Or not go far like in the playoffs, but I'm saying they could definitely make a run at the division against the Saints and Desmond Ridder and the Atlanta.
How many wins do you think they get this season?
Last year, they were about a, 6-win team, roughly. I could see them winning 8 or 9 games, and I don't think that's crazy to say that wins the division, right?
Stroud's pretty solid. Good accuracy, ready for the NFL. I think it could be interesting. I like your take. What about you?
I totally agree with your Carolina take. I mean, the way that they have completely revamped that whole offense. Like you mentioned, they got Thielen and Chark. They should take C.J. Stroud with this pick. He's the better of all the quarterbacks in this draft. And don't forget Miles Sanders in the backfield now too. That's such a great pickup in itself. I think this Panthers offense is totally revamped for the better. One other free agent I'd like to highlight was the Nelson Aguilar signing for the Baltimore Ravens. For my Ravens, I feel like seeing with the whole Lamar Jackson drama, which we are going to get into later, this was like teasing a kid with going to Disney, but going to the dentist instead. I'm seeing all these pictures of D-Hop trading, and I'm hearing about all these different receivers, and we end up signing Nelson Aguilar. He is a reliable receiver, yes, but at best, he is a wide receiver too, and he is not like his 2020 year with Oakland when he had 8 touchdowns and 800 receiving yards. I mean, so like you said, besides the Panthers, I feel like all these other teams are just signing the kind of basic, minimum, reliable guys.
Sure. Yeah, and let's go to your point about Lamar. Since the beginning of the offseason, it seemed like the Baltimore Ravens have been the most exciting team to watch because of their MVP quarterback, Lamar Jackson. With many failed attempts at agreeing to a long-term deal, Lamar tweeted a statement acknowledging a trade request he made on March 2nd, nearly 4 weeks ago. Zach, what is happening in Baltimore?
I mean, it's just a great time to be a Ravens fan. We don't know anything. It's very quiet. Even during the whole contract negotiation, we were just waiting to hear anything at all, and nothing was rolling out. And then to hear now, he posted it 3 weeks after he initially made the trade request. And it's, in my opinion, when I first read the tweet, I was kind of confused. But looking back, it's kind of just making things personal, kind of making things emotional now. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't make that much of a difference because at the end of the day, I don't think there's another trade partner out there for him. The way teams have all of a sudden backed out, like the Falcons. We had a talk earlier. The Falcons would probably be the best team for him. They backed out. Carolina backed out for obvious reasons now that they have the #1 pick. I mean, all these teams backed out immediately, and I think he's going to end up staying in a purple Baltimore Ravens uniform. As bad as he may even sit out for part of the year, but I don't see him going anywhere else.
I honestly agree with that take. The only other team I feel like that makes sense is probably Indianapolis, because it sounds like that they're iffy on drafting a quarterback, getting a guy, like they don't know yet unless they want to stick with Sam Ehlinger. But I think with Indianapolis, again, for the Ravens' perspective, you can get the 4th overall pick. So if you want to draft a quarterback this year, you can do that. Or you can draft one of the big-time defense, like Will Anderson, if he falls, right? That's a possibility. I think for Indianapolis' point of view, Trevor Lawrence is one of the better quarterbacks in football, but let's be honest, that division, it's not a lot of great football, right? I mean, the Titans, we don't know. It seems like they're restarting. When it comes to the Texans, they're still in that rebuilding stage. So, and I feel like Indianapolis be willing to pay, right? Because, I mean, they paid for Matt Ryan. They paid for Carson Wentz. They paid for Phillip Rivers. Like, they've been willing to pay the quarterback position. They just haven't hit yet. But I agree with you with the Lamar staying there because, again, none of these teams want to trade 2 first-round picks. None of these teams want to pay him a guaranteed contract. He wants the Deshaun Watson deal plus, and let's be honest, Deshaun Watson didn't even deserve a Deshaun Watson deal. So I think for best-case scenario for both sides, Lamar should probably stay at least for another year and then play out the whole contract dispute later on.
All right, not to mention with your Colts, your boy Shane Steichen's there now, right? He knows how to use mobile quarterbacks. I think that could really stir up some good things. But we could say that about any team. I mean, it's Lamar. He's going to elevate a team. I don't know what's going on. Did you have something to say?
Besides you hit the nail right on the head with the whole contract negotiation and how he's asking for it when at this point he doesn't exactly deserve it. He had that MVP year. That was such a great year. Failed to win in the playoffs, and then the very next 2 years, right at the end of the season, when it gets tight for playoffs, he goes out on an injury and doesn't come back for the remainder of the year. As we all love seeing Lamar Jackson play, but it's the question of will he get back to that MVP caliber play? It's not safe enough to guarantee you $250 million when the question is unanswered.
Right. Things are heating up. Similar to Millersville Sports, we're now going to send it over to Nicole Dalton with the latest in Marauder athletics.
Thanks, Liam. Spring sports are beginning to heat up as the teams try to make a push for the playoffs. with men's tennis taking a 5-2 win over Bloomsburg on the 24th for the beginning of the PSAC schedule. The Marauders have now won twice in a row against the Huskies for the first time since their 2006-2007 season. And women's tennis serving up victories over both Bloomsburg and East Stroudsburg by scores of 5-2 and 6-1 respectively. Softball had a mixed week, winning both games of a doubleheader against Mansfield and losing 2 to Westchester. Their success at Mansfield gives Millersville head coach Jen Probst her 300th career win. Millersville went strong, winning 8-2 and 14-16 against Mansfield. On Tuesday, the Marauders fought the Golden Rams, but would fall 5-2 and 9-1, making them 13-13 for the season. Women's lacrosse sank Shippensburg by a score of 19-12 on the 25th, beating the Raiders in PSAC play, improving to 5-3 for the season and 2-1 in the PSAC. The Marauders had an early lead, holding Shippensburg scoreless in the first quarter and only allowing 2 goals before halftime. This drops Shippensburg to 1-7 overall. Good luck to all the teams as they continue their seasons and swing towards the end of the season. After the break, we send it back to the desk for a preview in the MLB with opening day right around the corner. In the Zone, we'll be right back.
Last season in Major League Baseball, the Houston Astros won another World Series title. However, this season, the San Diego Padres have bolstered their roster. Bill, is this the year the Padres finally put it all together, or is there another team that can threaten the defending champs?
I just want to say this. The Padres are definitely one of the better teams in the National League. I want to start that off. They will make the playoffs. Am I sold on them winning the NL West? Not quite, because it's the Dodgers, even though the Dodgers have lost a lot of guys like Trey Turner and Cody Bellinger, even though he's not the most lovable guy on the Dodgers, but he's no longer on the team. They've lost a lot of depth, but every year they find a way to win a lot of regular season games. But my thing is they have been the definition of inconsistent over the years, right? They barely made the playoffs last year. I feel like that should not be forgotten. And similar to what the Phillies did last year, they kind of went on that wild card run that no one expected. They went to the Mets and won. No one thought that was going to happen. Then they beat the Dodgers in a playoff series that no one saw happening at all. And they got to the NLCS, and their luck kind of ran out. The issue for them is, yes, they've gotten Xander Bogaerts this offseason, and Juan Soto is going to get a fall season with them, and Manny Machado is one of the best third basemen in the sport, and also Tatis coming back. The issue is they don't have depth now. They've lost about 4 guys last year who were prominent bats for them. Jerickson Profar, who was their leadoff guy. Brandon Drury, who's now an Angel. He was big for them at the deadline. Same thing with Josh Bell. Will Myers was one of their better fielders. He played in the outfield and played at first base. And similar to the Mets also, who also have had like a very big offseason, I don't expect them to, go for a World Series run this year. I would love it to be my Phillies, but if I had to put my marbles on one team, it would be the Atlanta Braves. They're just the definition of consistency. And if they can stay healthy, if Acuna can stay healthy in particular, that team can go far.
How do you feel?
I definitely agree with your Atlanta Braves take. I mean, the Padres, like you said, have just been inconsistent with how much hype they tend to get. For a team like that to go out and win 88 games, place 3rd in your division. The division is crazy with the Giants and the Dodgers. That's a crazy division, but I mean, a team should not be getting that much hype just to win 88 games. But like you said, the Braves, they picked up Sean Murphy, so now they have a reliable bat in the catcher position. Although they got rid of Dansby Swanson, the only question that I have about the Braves is, will Orlando Arcia be able to fill that defensive role? Mm-hmm. If he does, the Braves are going to be real scary when the season begins to kick off. Another team that I also wanted to mention, as bad as it sounds, the Yankees have a real good shot. They always seem to falter near the postseason, but I mean, the way that they were able to bring up Anthony Volpe now and at shortstop, their infield's looking nice, their outfield is looking set. I think the Yankees have a real good shot as well.
My only disagreement on that is they don't have a number 2 bat, and that is huge in baseball. Like, Rizzo's good, but I don't think you should have Rizzo being dependent on your number 2 bat. If there's any team in the American League who could beat the Astros, and this might seem hot, I think it's the Seattle Mariners. I really like what they're building. They probably have the best bullpen right behind the Astros, but in the American League, they have a really good starting rotation. And Julio Rodriguez is one of the best players in baseball.
Right. I like it. The NL East is set to have an exciting year with contenders all around, with the Braves, Mets, and Phillies Zach, Philadelphia is starting the season with some injuries. How can they rebound and repeat their amazing postseason from just a year ago?
They're obviously going to start off by losing a few games. I mean, Bryce Harper is still hurt. Reese is probably out for the remainder of the season. So they are going to lose some games. So I guess the biggest thing would be is to not panic. Not to start to hit the panic button and start to trade a bunch of your pieces. Philly fans will just need to take a break. It's a 162-game season. They'll have time. Bryce will be able to make his return. And the Phillies, their lineup is even good just without it. I mean, you've got Real Muto. Alec Boehm has his defense is still a little rough, but he has proven himself in the batting lineup. They've got Trey Turner now. Trey Turner's on fire. Kyle Schwarber is still that guy with a bat in his hand. And I mean, even their starting rotation, their bullpen isn't the best, but even their starting rotation with Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler going back to back, that's just a scary duo in itself.
I completely agree. I would also want to talk about and bring up from last year also, they started off very slow. They were 21-29 in their first 50. They also went into firing their manager, and then Rob Thompson came in and everything, started to go from there. But also to add on to what you said, not only do they have a great 1-2 punch, but also Ranger Suarez in the postseason last year was big for the Phillies. They signed Tyjon Walker from the New York Mets. You go to the bullpen. Yes, it is shaky. I do agree with you on that. And they've lost pieces like Eflin and David Robertson, but they bring in a guy like Craig Kimbrell, who's one of the better closing pitchers in baseball. They trade for Gregory Soto from the Detroit Tigers. He had, I believe, around a 2 ERA last year. You add on to what they have on the batting order, like you said, Schwarber, but maybe Castellanos can turn it around finally, right? Brandon Marsh was good for them in the postseason last year. Let's also add that they still have some depth. I really like Edmundo Sosa. He was good for the Phillies when they needed him to show up, when they had him playing shortstop. And Bryson Stott as well. This Phillies team will be fine, and they're definitely going to make a push for the World Series.
That's right. Just don't panic, right? Don't panic. Now, talk of the town, Shohei Ohtani. Now, he is set to make an MLB record $65 million this season. Half of that money coming from a contract extension he signed last October, and the other half is estimated to come from endorsement deals. Guys, the Angels have all this talent but can never come through. Phil Nevin was hired as the new manager this season, but can the Angels finally make it to the postseason? We'll go to you first, Bill.
So here's the thing. The American League is tough, right? The American League East alone, outside of Boston, in my opinion, they're not really there. Losing Bogarts is big. But outside them, that division is loaded with teams. You go to the Central, the Guardians are one of the best teams in baseball. You go to the West, which the Angels are in. They got to go against the Astros, the Mariners. Maybe the Texas Rangers can turn around with signing DeGrom. But here's what I have to say. I think that they can go for it because they've added depth around Trout and Ohtani. They already had good bats like Taylor Ward, like Jared Walsh. Hopefully Rendon could finally turn it around. He's one of the better third basemen when he's healthy. Max Stacy's one of the better catchers in the sport as well. But they signed a guy like Tyler Anderson from the Dodgers who had a 2.57 ERA. You signed Brandon Drury this offseason. You signed Matt Moore, who had a 1.95 ERA from the Texas Rangers from the bullpen, so you're bolstering that. One of the biggest issues has been pitching for the last few years outside of Shohei Ohtani, of course. And they signed Gio Urshela, who was a former Yankee, played for the Twins last year. Wasn't great for the Twins, but now I believe going to an Angels ballpark, which is more hitter-friendly than Minnesota, he's going to have some more benefits this year. And Hunter Renfroe is one of the better power bats in the sport as a whole. They could definitely make a run for it, but they're going to have to be consistent because consistency's been one of their biggest problems as well as pitching.
Right, well, a lot of what-ifs on that roster. How are you feeling about that?
Without a doubt. I mean, like you said, the way that they have built and managed this roster, the ceiling is very high for this team, but that also means that the floor is very low. The biggest thing is Anthony Rendon needs to stay healthy. He's been on this team for a few years, and he hasn't been able to be that guy due to injury. If he's able to stay healthy and he's able to get to being that guy that the Angels hoped he would be when they signed him, then that would help build around the rest of the infield, like you said, Jared Walsh and then Gio Urshela. And then also, I really like the Hunter Renfroe signing. I think that's going to help out with the lineup as well. It's going to help take a bit of the weight off of Shohei and Mike Trout's bat itself. I mean, those two are just going to go out and do their thing. but it's also you won't need to worry that much about Mike Trout and Shohei stepping up to the plate when the time comes.
That's right, and we'll get to find out very, very soon. Baseball's here, guys. That will do it for this week's edition of In the Zone. For Zach Humphreys and Bill Cullen, I'm Liam Crane. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you right here next week on In the Zone.